Hi guys, this is Vidas.
And Ausra.
Let's start episode 130 of Ask Vidas and Ausra podcast. Today's question was sent by Aleksey, and he wants to know about registration. What are some of the perfect or worst stop combinations? That's a broad question, right, Ausra?
Yes, it's a very broad question.
Where should we start?
I think, not understanding the style well can make you to put worse stops for your pieces.
You remember sometimes we go to churches and especially not in Vilnius but in other cities where people play the organ but they don't know what they're using, what type of instruments and what type of stops should they use. Sometimes they play with all the stops drawn out and with vibrato, with
Yes, that's
tremolant.
right, yes.
Have you heard that?
Yes, I
It's
have heard that actually many times.
It's like a big Hammond organ, although it's a pipe organ. It sounds quite
I know,
funny.
or when you use some undulating stop and you don't use 8-foot, stop.
True.
That's another thing. I have heard that also many times.
Or when you use mixtures but without foundations.
Yes, it's also, a horrifying sound, at least for my ears.
The reason they do that is sometimes mixtures are positioned closest to the player in the bottom
And it's
rank,
easy to pull
easy
them.
to find them, and the principal is on the top, and you have to reach for it. And maybe an amateur organist just looks at the closest stop and draws it.
I know it's a hard thing, and it takes time to develop a good taste, and knowledge about different styles and different registrations, and and how to adjust, for example, to particular organ which is not built in that period or not, styled in that period, but you still have to play music from some particular period.
What organ do you know the most, Osha?
St. John's is probably.
I agree.
And of course, our practice organ. I know it very well. It has 2 stops.
Yeah, 8 and 4
Yes,
flutes.
and pull down pedal.
There is so much to learn about those
I
two
know
stops. Soft and softer.
Yes.
um, do you have your favorite organ stop in our church?
Well, the very favorite cornet. If I would have to choose one, it would be cornet stop.
If I would have to choose, I would choose two actually. Undamaris and Viola Gamba. At first, Undamaris was better for me than Gamba, but recently I've been discovering so beautiful and quite intense colors with the upper range of Viola Gamba on the third manual that I kind of keep improvising on these stops all the time.
Yes.
Um,
And I find that cornet really beautiful. It's very nice for a solo voice.
I think in every recital we use cornet at least once.
Yes. But there are also other, nice stops. Some flutes are really nice. And I like Posaune in the pedal. Posaune 16 in the pedals.
Especially the low E flat.
Yes.
Why E flat?
Because it makes such a funny sound and it's fun to play Bach's, prelude in E flat major where you have to, press it.
Oh, the B section.
Yes, yes.
Ba 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 bum pum 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 pum. Ba.
Yes.
That low E flat is.
It sounds funny. So, and if we could, tell people about things what we should not probably do while registering. I think when playing trio sonata by J.S. Bach,
Okay.
I would say you would always add 16 foot
In the manuals or in the
in
pedals?
the pedals. In the pedals, because I have heard, trio sonatas played so many times, and people not using 16 foot in the pedal. I think that's a principal mistake.
Remember, we recently heard even Bach cantatas, Christmas oratorio
Yes,
performed,
yes,
and they didn't play with the double bass, continuo arias. Double bass was always present with choir movements, right? So
yes,
always the octave down sound was present mm, in the loud sections. But when somebody sang an aria with one or two instruments, they didn't use 16 foot,
yes.
which was, I think, not a good choice.
In general, I like, that low foundation, that gravity in the pedal. And I would suggest always play, with a 16 foot stop in the pedal unless there is some indication by the composer don't do that. Or, it has like a solo voice and it should be played on some particular stop.
You sound like Mendelssohn now.
Really?
He wrote in his preface to his six organ sonatas that you should always include 16 foot stop unless there is indication otherwise.
Because, without 16 foot stop in the pedal, organ lose, I don't know, half of its beauty.
But then there is the question of the historical period, right? Before 17th century, for example, 16 foot in the pedal was not very common.
Well, yes, but because most of that music before that period was written only for manuals, so you don't have that, trouble. Think about, like Italian music, early music, French early music. We didn't have developed pedal, so we did not need no 16 foot.
What about North German music?
Well, I'm talking about North German, starting from North Germany.
But
Look how the organs are developed, and look at that huge pedal towers.
but before 17th century, 16 foot in the pedals, even in Germany, was not always chosen.
Well, do you mean if performer would not choose it, or it was absent from the it wasn't in the organ, built in the
Performer,
organ?
of course, because of course those big, huge pedal towers sometimes included 32 foot stops. But cantus firmus in the pedals, when they used choral notes in the long values played by feet, not always they included 16 foot.
So when you have cantus firmus in the pedal, I already mentioned it. When the pedal has a solo voice, when actually yes, you don't include the 16 foot, but that's another story.
Unless it's a bass. In
Yes,
the bass, yes,
yes,
but if it's a tenor, it's
yes,
8 foot
yes,
level. It's if it's alto, maybe a 4 foot level. If it's soprano, maybe 2 foot level, right?
yes. But for most of the cases, still you can find, if you would compare the repertoire with 16 foot stop in the pedal and without it, I would say that with 16 foot would win over those cases without 16 foot.
Especially the repertoire that we are accustomed to today.
Yes, and plus if you are church organist, if you are accompanying congregational singing, I just not imagined that you would not use 16 foot in the pedal.
Yes, you're right. For congregational singing, 16 foot stops are essential.
Yes. What about putting 16 foot in the manual? What would you suggest for people to do then?
There are choices when you want to have more gravity. And for example, some organs don't have the pedal board at all, but they have 16 foot in the manual. Then you have stop combinations with 16 foot, and it's a little bit muddy, but it's a broader sound, more with gravity. It fits sometimes. Um, And then there is a question with mixtures. Sometimes mixtures are high, sometimes low. With low mixtures, like in our St. John's Church first manual mixture, it is based on the 4-foot level, which means that you do need to have 16-foot in the manual.
And I have heard many times when organists come and we just don't use the 16-foot in the manual, but use that mixture, and it sounds actually not well.
Can you use mixtures with strings, for example? Is it a good idea?
Not so much.
You don't.
I don't like that combination. Although I heard that some organists do that. What about you?
Yeah, sometimes if the string is soft, and I don't mean here undulating strings like viola celeste, but just like viola or traditional gamba, then sometimes it's okay. Uh, Especially when I improvise and I build up a piano sound, and I don't have the time to take out some of the strings, it sounds convincing to me.
Well, if I want to strengthen, my principal chorus, then I add flutes, not strings. That's what I prefer.
Do you think flutes they eat more air or strings?
Flute, probably.
Flutes. So in our case, in our organ, there is some inconsistency with the winding system, and sometimes those big stops which require a lot of air don't necessarily fit the large sounds. I mean the large registration. I mean here 16-foot flutes on the third manual or on the second manual. I don't use them
Well,
too
I don't
often.
use them too, but I put 8-foot flutes, and that doesn't hurt organ so much, and
I
all
agree.
the wind system.
Mhm.
So basically, with registration is a tricky thing. You can know them theoretically very well, but on each instrument you need to adjust and you need to listen to. Because sometimes, if you just pull out the stops that are required, for that piece and you will not listen to it, you might get a disaster. Because each organ is a little bit different. That we talked sometime about that organ in Nida that we have on the coast in Lithuania that has just, ridiculous mixture. It's so awful. I never use it. Even if, I'm playing piece by J.S. Bach that requires no mixture and piano registration. Still, I don't manage it. It's very ugly.
It is too fierce, too screaming,
Yes,
too high pitched,
yes.
like a cymbal, but too bright.
I know. And I'm thinking if I would use it, after my performance, probably the church would be empty. Everybody would just leave.
Maybe it's okay to use it just once in a while, just for a special effect, and that's it.
But well, if you are playing, let's say, Prelude and Fugue by Bach
A
and
long one.
a long one, then, hardly anybody would survive it. And I heard organists use that mixture. So you always just need to listen to the organ stop and to your registration.
And how does it sound
Yes.
in the church, in the sanctuary?
So it's always a good idea if you are registering pieces for your recital. If you have assistant or somebody that could help you and to play a little bit of your music, you would just go downstairs and listen how it sounds.
If you don't have an assistant, put a recorder or a phone down in the pews and then record yourself for a short moment and see if you like the combinations, and then come back, listen to it, and change something if you don't.
Yes, that's a good idea too.
Thank you guys, this was Vidas.
And Tosha,
And remember, when you practice,
miracles happen.